What is up, guys? It is Stu, and it's another episode of the What the Fuck Gym Talk podcast. Today, we're talking about corporately owned locations and the closing of the Fhitting Room, which is a very well-known boutique microgym group fitness out of New York City. They are a corporately owned shop. And when I say corporately owned, for anyone not familiar with that, I just mean they own all their locations, as opposed to franchising, where you create a model and then you get franchise disclosure documents drawn up, and then you sell your franchise to franchisees and they grow your business. Corporately owned stores have the massive challenge of having to grow their own, and this is incredibly difficult. For those of you that are unaware of what it's like to scale to 10, 25, 50, or like Solid Core did recently, 100 locations, corporately owned, what that is a never-ending grind of having to raise money, typically private equity, and open locations. And you have to open them at such a speed because the compounding brand awareness effect that they have. So you identify the right markets, you're doing a nationwide rollout, and you're opening locations as quick as you can, because that allows you to gain traction in particular markets. If you open one location up in a single market, it's a speck on the radar. Nobody knows. But if you open 3 locations up in Cincinnati, Ohio, well, people start seeing that, like, oh shit, that must be a really big brand. That must be really successful. And then some authority happens, and transference of the brand equity, and people are like, oh, that must be a big deal. I should check them out. They must be successful. So corporately owned stores are incredibly difficult. That's why I know so many of us that are like, if you're an independent gym owner, all you've been hearing about for years, F45 franchises, Orange Theory franchises, metabolic franchises, exponential franchises. And you're like, fuck them. I'm sick and tired of hearing about franchises. But you got to understand, if you want to scale a brand into, I don't care, regionally or nationally, franchising is the easiest way to go compared to corporately owned stores, because you have to use your own money or borrowed money for corporately owned. With franchises, it's the franchisee's problem. They're getting an SBA loan. They're borrowing their great Nana's fucking money to get the down payment for that loan. They're going and taking the risk. With corporately owned stores, you control the brand 100%, unlike franchising. Franchising, you control the brand, but you can't control the business. Corporately owned stores, you control both. But to grow them at a clip, like, again, I'm going to use Solid Core as an example later in this podcast, is absolutely insane. It's very tough. So I want to go ahead and share this. This was the news that came out recently. I was pretty bummed about. So Fhitting Room is a brand in New York City, corporately owned. The owner is Carrie Sadowitz. I'm probably fucking it up, Carrie. I apologize. She's the founder. L. Montgomery is the president. And then I found in another article, Liz Benjamin is the CEO. I don't know if Liz Benjamin is still the CEO at the time that they are closing all these. And I know founder, president, CEO, everyone's like, isn't it the same fucking thing? It doesn't have to be. It doesn't have to be. And in Fhitting Room's case, it isn't. But Carrie is still heavily involved in the business. She is the founder, and she, her and her team made the decision to close most of their studios. And I talked about them a lot pre-pandemic. I talked to them a little bit afterwards because they were really quick to jump on the video thing, like really good video content, and keep cash flow coming in to whatever degree they could. And again, New York City got fucked. Probably one of the worst areas to get fucked by COVID, outside of like Seattle, and some of the areas out there. But anyway, they cited aggressive third-party booking companies making things really hard for them. I think the quote down here was, over the years, the world around us has changed profoundly. An explosion in competition has led to more promotions, while aggressive third-party booking companies, aka ClassPass and GymPass, have changed the way many clients book and buy classes. The result is significantly less revenue. Okay. She also noted that post-pandemic, it permanently altered daily routines, and that her early morning and late evening prime times were a relic of the past, essentially stating like, hey, the work from home crowd came kind of mid-morning, afternoon, late afternoon, and then our traditional pops of time decreased. And kind of fucked up their historic schedule, their operations and the systems that were probably built on those prime times. Simultaneously, substantial increases in overhead costs and astronomical increases in operating expenses have created a chasm too big to close. So they sent out this, there was a message that they sent out, where is it? To all their locations. I've got it here. Go check out their Instagram. It's really well written. It's sad. I mean, I always was a big fan of this location, of this brand. When I was in New York City, I popped in. I only got to see the first location, but I want to talk about this because, I've been asked a lot, like, what do you think about this? What do you think about Fitting Room closing? And I summarize it like this. To own a corporately owned shop, especially in New York City or LA or Miami or Chicago or one of the big markets in the US, and to scale it is incredibly difficult. Like I talked about earlier, why it's harder than franchising, why you need a ton of money to do so. But I do also want to talk about some other things with the Fitting Room thing that kind of confused me and that I was, I'm still scratching my head on. And if anyone has answers to this, let me know. So back in March of 2023, and do you guys is anyone else when they, I love Athletech and I love all these, but my God, I know you guys got to make money. These fucking banners that pop up on these websites drive me insane. They remind me of early day Yahoo with the fucking banners everywhere. It drives me insane. Anyway, in March 1st of 2023, NYSC, which stands for New York Sports Clubs. It's it's a health club in New York City. It's not just in New York City. It's a brand. It is New York Sports Clubs, but they have locations all over the place. They got their dick kicked in during COVID. They survived. They got cash. And they made it out of there. But one of their efforts in 2023 was, hey, we're not going to try to do boutique fitness better than all of the boutique fitness brands. So we're going to grab a brand and bring it in-house. And they acquired or they merged with the Fitting Room. And that's what this article pretty much talks about. The Fitting Room is making moves on the occasion of its 10-year anniversary. So 10 years in, they're now expanding corporately in a significant way. They were opening up an Upper East Side location, which did open, a Washington, D.C. location in DuPont Circle. And if you're not familiar with DuPont Circle in Washington, D.C., killer fucking location, but stupid expensive. Metabolic has a location there that I've been to several times. The rent is stupid, but great area. And Philadelphia Society Hill. So they're going to roll out, NYSC has locations in the Upper East Side, Washington, D.C., DuPont Circle, Philly, and they're going to be installing the Fitting Room in these locations. It seems like a pretty happy ending, for the Fitting Room. They get bought or, they get a cash play or some kind of merger or partnership, and they get to expand inside of these health clubs to be their premier boutique fitness thing. Seems like a great way to scale. It's not, it's still corporately owned, it sounds like, or at least maybe NYSC has some ownership in it, but you're not having to go the franchise route. It, seems pretty good. But now they're closing all of those. So if you go to their site, this is the Fitting Room's website. And they show the 3 states. So I guess they never got that Philadelphia location open. But in New York, they're closing that Upper East Side location, the one that they just announced in March of 2023, it's closing. All right. And that's inside of a New York City sports club. The Upper West Side location, I think that's what I say. The Upper West Side location is staying open. Okay. That's inside of a New York City sports club too, I believe. The Chelsea location is closing, which is also inside of a New York City sports club. My question is this: how are these things closing if they're inside of New York sports clubs? If the New York sports clubs is their partner, unless they're charging them an amount of rent that's insane. Maybe that's who she also referred to by third party. Maybe she didn't want to say, hey, I got fucked in my deal with New York sports clubs. But I get if she still had the locations where she was just dealing with the landlord and, it was just economically not working out, I get that. But I thought the partnership with them would kind of be almost like an incubator. Okay, we're safe now. We have controlled rent. We are an amenity for these gyms, these health clubs, these New York sports clubs. We're kind of protected now. I don't have to worry about rent skyrocketing. And I don't know the inner workings of that deal. If I can find a way to have a conversation with any of these women, I will let you know. But go to Washington, D.C. This is the DuPont Circle one, again, in a New York sports club, and that's closing as well here at the end of June. And there's one in Jersey, looks like it's staying open, and it's inside of another fitness company, inside of Drop Fitness, which is a health club as well. So it seems like that was kind of their go. Now, who knows? Maybe New York City sports clubs, they're the ones that are really in trouble and they're closing it down. I don't know. And there's nothing I can find on the internet to tell me otherwise. But the closing of this, first thing I thought was, God, that sucks. Opening corporately owned stores is difficult. It really is. And this is proof. It's very, very, very hard to do. But then all these locations closing inside of NYSC locations, that was the whole idea of the partnership. It just got me scratching my head. Like, why in the fuck would they be closing? Wouldn't NYSC want them to stay and help out? Like, I don't understand. Someone smart, someone who knows the situation closer, please holler at your boy so I'm not spitting any ignorant information. But I do want to go in here and talk a little bit more on the corporately owned side, okay? So Alchemy 365, right? I'm going to kick over here real quick. So you guys know I'm a huge fan of this brand. I just did a shoot the shit with Tyler Quinn, who's the CEO and co-founder. My good friend and colleague, Mike Jones, is the other co-founder. These are gentlemen who were born out of CrossFit, had very successful multiple CrossFit locations in Minneapolis, and they created this brand, Alchemy 365. Since then, this is their home, this is their origin story, is Minnesota. All right. So in Minneapolis, they grew in the St. Paul, Edina, and downtown Minneapolis locations. So they have 4 locations in Minnesota. They recently opened up 4 locations in Colorado. So it's an 8-unit corporately owned company. And if you have listened to that podcast that I just did less than 90 days ago with Tyler Quinn, the CEO, he is not interested in franchising, at least to my ears, at least on the podcast. But I'll tell you this. He very openly discussed the challenges of corporately grown stores. Any of you guys who have dreams of having multiple locations, I want you to understand how difficult this shit can be. There are definitely stories of being able to do this, and you get lucky and hard work in the right place at the right time. But to open this many stores, it is a constant raise money. Typically private equity. You can't keep going to your aunts and uncles and your Mima for friends and family raises. You are going to private equity. You are borrowing money. You are giving up equity. You are taking on a ton of debt service with the risk, or like with the idea that if I grow this thing big enough, someone will want to acquire the whole thing. I know that's what Alchemy's goal was, per my conversation with Tyler. They wanted to get big enough that in bigger brand can say, fuck, they've got 25 locations, 50 locations, or like Solid Core. Solid Core sold for $88 million. She opened 100 corporately owned stores. Let me zoom in on this. I apologize if you hear the nice Mexican gentleman leaf blowing outside the studio. I'm just saying they just are. I'm not calling them Mexican for any other reason. They just are. They're nice Mexican gentlemen, all right? How I turned $175,000 into a Pilates company and sold it for $88 million. This is Ann Mullum and Mullum. No, I think it's Mullum. I think I got that right. So she started Solid Core. If you're not familiar with Solid Core, it's this right here. It is a Pilates studio. Pilates is probably one of the more popular methodologies currently out there right now in the fitness industry that's super niche. Right, you need a megaformer, you need a specific piece of equipment. They have done it incredibly well. Big fan of what they've done. I've always liked their brand. I don't know Ann personally, but I've always been a fan from afar. And if you look at all the states she's opened in: California, Colorado, Connecticut, Florida, Delaware, Georgia, Minnesota, Michigan. She has 100 locations. And look at all these ones that are that are ready to open. Summer of 2024, they have 5 more locations coming online. And then fall of 2024, they have 3 more locations coming online. That is why she was able to go ahead and sell her entire brand for $88 million. So here it is. In April 2023, Ann sold her remaining shares of Solid Core, stepping away from her executive chairwoman role. Between the acquisition and 2 previous investment deals, Ann cashed out her equity for a total of $88.4 million. So she had to raise a ton of fucking private equity to get to 100. She raised a ton, and now she is being bought out completely. Whatever equity she had remaining, they bought her out the rest of it, So it is their company now. Whatever happens to it from here on out, whatever. But she cashed out for 88 million. And I mean, this isn't a lot. Like, she started the first one in 2013, right? So it's 2024 now. Like, we're 11 years later. That's it. I mean, go back to the Fitting Room fucking article. On the Fitting Rooms, the occasion of their 10-year anniversary, in 10 years, they finally are opening up a couple more stores, but they barely have 5 open 10 years in at the Fitting Room. Whereas Anne, in 11 years, had 100 plus locations across 25 states and sells for 88 million. That's the difference. That's like I listened to Anne on a podcast, a colleague of mine, Jay Ciano, who's also in the commercial real estate game with Sabre. And he asked her about scaling. And she always just had this fuck it, I'm going to burn the world down with blue lights and solid core. I am going big. I am going to scale the fuck out of this thing. And granted, she had a background in scaling a business. She started a nonprofit. It was essentially a running nonprofit for the homeless and drug addicted. And she had a great, cool story with that. But I mean, so she had experience growing shit. But anyway, I just wanted to bring this to light because, number one, I don't think people give enough credit to these brands, the Alchemies of the world, even Fitting Room. I give them a ton of credit for what they did. They didn't hit the scale that, Alchemy or those other ones did. But again, they stayed only in New York. I mean, they stayed in New York City. I want to go to Solid Core. How many locations do they have in New York? Because that's the thing. It's like when you open up that many corporately owned stores, yeah, look at this. Chelsea, downtown Brooklyn, Dumbo, I don't know what the fuck that is. East Village, Grand Central, Greenwich, Long Island, East Village, I already said that, Upper East Side, Williamsburg, Soho. I mean, Nomad. These are all very popular neighborhoods in New York. Like, this is, to open up that many is so, do you know how much money is needed to do that? It's crazy. It's fucking crazy, especially corporate. You're training everybody. You are in charge of every single detail. There's no franchisees, to be like, it's his company. He's running it. Like, it's franchisee, follow the playbook. But that's on you, homie. No, as a corporately owned store, that's on you, homie. That's on you and your corporate HQ. Did you know the infrastructure a corporate company like Solid Core would need to have over 100 corporately owned stores? Insane. Fucking insane. I need to ask Jay to introduce me to Anne because I'd love to learn more about this. But anyway, I wanted to just jam on this. Those of you that are pursuing corporately owned dynasties in the fitness industry, I bow down all respect to the tenacity of that audacious as fuck goal. My hat is off to you because it truly is audacious to really want to scale something nationwide. Anyone who is looking to go from location 1 to 2 or 3 or from 4 to 5 and 5 to 10, and you need help on the rollout, commercial real estate wise, shoot me a DM, head over to the gymrealestatecompany.co, gymrealestatecompany.co. That's it. Yeah. And let me know. Would love to help out with that. But here's the thing. I want us to recognize those of us who have dreams of this in our head. You need to study. I always say, one thing I think has made me so successful, I am a student of the industry and the history of the business of fitness. I love talking about the start and the fall of curves. I love looking back to when Arnold showed up and just put a needle, no pun intended, in the ass of the health club in the United States and made health clubs, vogue and mainstream. I love looking at the industry like this. And for those of you guys that have dreams of having multiple stores, even in your state, you got to look at these other brands. You have to understand what those before you've done, because you just be like, oh, I'm just going to work real hard. You won't make it. I truly don't think you will. I think there's a chance one of you comes back in 10 years and gives me the finger and it's like, fuck you, I made it. And I'll be more than happy to be wrong there. But unless you go ahead and you start looking at how it's been done, how it failed, how it was just mediocre by all these other brands, and these are just 3 that I talked about today, it's going to be hard for you to see the path forward and see, where the pitfalls are and things like that. So anyway, Hope you guys enjoyed this. I'd love to know your thoughts. If anyone has any information on this whole Fitting Room, New York Sports Club thing, that I can't wrap my head around and figure out why the fuck this happened. They had to close these locations inside of there. And maybe it was part of a deal. Maybe they had to perform. Maybe there was a certain performance thing, and maybe it was just ClassPass. And by the way, with ClassPass in certain markets is great. In other markets, it's dog shit. It's not going to work. Unfortunately fucks over a lot of studios. Especially now with them telling you when you can, like back in the day, you used to be able to just throttle down ClassPass. Like ClassPassers are only allowed to these classes, and now they're going out and telling people, no, you have to allow ClassPass to all of the classes. You can't select. That's fucking ridiculous. So ClassPass, shame on you. But anyway, guys, until I talk to you in the next podcast, have a great fucking day.